Whether you're writing a novel or a screenplay or any type of story, one of the best ways to save time is to draft it without any dialogue. Now, depending on the type of writer you are, this idea may scare you off. It may be way out of your comfort zone. But hear me out today, because I'm going to tell you why you should draft without dialogue and how you can pull it off. What's up, guys? My name is Brandon McNulty. I'm a writer, and welcome to my writing channel. Today I want to open up with a quote from Alfred Hitchcock. And once he was interviewed and asked how does he know when a script is done and when it's ready to shoot. And what he said in reply was, when the screenplay has been written and the dialogue has been added, we're ready to shoot. Now, the most interesting part of that quote, at least for the purpose of this video, is that part about, and the dialogue has been added. Because when I first read that, it just blew me away, because it implies that Alfred Hitchcock would write his scripts and he would do it without having any dialogue in there, and he would add it all in at the end. And that's something that might be hard to wrap your head around if you haven't heard of this technique before. Drafting without dialogue works because dialogue itself is really just the same thing as action. And when it comes to stories, there are usually three different components that make up most stories, and they are description, action, and dialogue. And the thing about action and dialogue is they're very much the same. Dialogue is basically just verbalized action. For instance, if I came into your house right now and you didn't want me there, you could take action. You could just grab me and throw me out the door, and that would be action. But if you didn't want to go out over there and grab me, you could still take action by yelling at me or threatening to call the cops or saying, I have a gun, I'm going to shoot you if you don't get out of here, something like that. And that is still taking action, even though it's just in the form of dialogue. So action and dialogue are roughly the same thing. When you're drafting a story, and when I say drafting, I mean one of your early drafts, like your first draft, your second, not your final draft, because that's probably where you want to start putting the dialogue in. But early on, if you want to save time, you can actually just skip over the dialogue. And the way to do this, here's what you do. You start right at the top, maybe chapter 1 or the opening line of your screenplay. You start giving your description, you start maybe introducing your main character, describing what they look like. Then you have your main character doing something. Maybe they're fixing their car, checking under the hood, something like that. And then all of a sudden somebody comes on the scene and they walk up to your main character and they start talking to them. Now, this would normally be the part where you would start typing out a conversation and there would be a huge back and forth. It would take up maybe some pages, or I don't know how long, depending on how much you like dialogue and how much you like to include in there. Now, instead of doing that, try just basically explaining what specific actions are meant through that dialogue. And you do this over the course of the story. Instead of investing yourself in dialogue and just, ripping through page after page of dialogue that's really just kind of wasting time because it's only going to get scrapped anyway, just try focusing strictly on description and action. And I know this is probably going to drive some people nuts, especially if you're the type of writer who lives to write dialogue. I know there are a lot of writers out there who just love it. It's their favorite part of the whole writing process. So maybe this technique isn't for you. But if you are that type of person, you're inevitably going to hit some points in your writing process where you're going to just hit a snag and you're not going to know where to really take the story. And I know from past experience, I have done things in the past where I hit a rough spot, I don't know where to take the story, and what I do is I kind of just procrastinate through dialogue. I'll just be typing away, and I'll have my characters just saying things just so I'm writing in my mind, and really I'm not pushing the story along. I'm just watching these two characters converse, and they're not changing each other's minds, they're not pushing the story along, they're not engaging in conflict, they're just kind of sitting there or standing there and talking. And that's not what you want out of dialogue. You don't want dialogue to just be there. You want it to perform an action. You want it to convince other characters to do something, or to intimidate other characters, or change their hearts, change their minds, whatever it is. Now, I'm sure there are probably some other writers out there who are thinking, well, if I do this no dialogue first draft, what's going to happen in later drafts when I do have to write that dialogue? How am I going to know how my characters speak? That's going to cause some issues, isn't it? Well, consider this. I've tried drafting without dialogue before, and I've done entire drafts with absolutely no dialogue. And one of the interesting things that happens when I move on to a later draft where I do need to include that dialogue, one of the interesting things that happens is that I find that the characters are just about ready to pop because I've been keeping them silent for an entire draft or maybe an entire couple drafts. And once they finally get that chance to talk, I know what kind of people they are through their actions, through the choices they make from start to finish in my drafts. And once they do get that opportunity to speak, they are just ready to rip. So keep that in mind and by all means give it a shot. You don't have to commit to it for an entire draft, but maybe try it for a short story or try it for a chapter of your book and see how it goes. Question of the day, what is your favorite Alfred Hitchcock movie? Let me know in the comments section below. And if you're wondering, mine is Rear Window. Thanks for watching, guys. Be sure to check out my other videos. Hit the like and subscribe button for me, and remember to keep on writing.